Welcome to episode number 64 of Dumb All Over. Joining us now, as promised, is Nils Palsson. He is running for Congress in California's 5th Congressional District. How are you, Nils?
I'm doing pretty great. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Hopefully I pronounced the name correctly.
Yeah, Nils like hills. You got it pretty well.
Perfect.
Oh, good
All
job,
right,
Tom.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often in the show. Pronunciations are difficult for me, so I'm pretty proud of myself.
Sometimes you forget your own name.
Yeah, that actually happens. Thank you for
You probably
joining us.
interview a lot of Nilses too, right?
We do, yeah, but for the most part, I get their names pretty accurately.
Yeah, you actually did a good job.
I did mess up a couple, though, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, thank you for joining us. We're pretty excited to have you on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because we became friends on Facebook, and that's how we found each other. But I'd like to know a little bit more about you, if you could.
Sure. Well, I would say, starting with the why, I'm a dad and I care about future generations, and I see that we can be doing things in a different way. And so I feel inspired to be a part of the shift that's happening in our culture, and it's happening on so many different levels, political, economic, social, but the shift to living in a way that takes care of each other, that shares, that takes care of our home planet that we all co-inhabit, and that, that creates an economy and a society that actually meets the needs of everyday people and not just, the wealthiest 1/10 of 1%. So I feel inspired to participate in that shift, and it feels like my quest right now is to run for Congress.
That's awesome.
Some folks have the quest of running for city council. I honor that. Some folks have the quest of doing independent media. I honor that. It takes all levels. I'm a working dad in California's 5th Congressional District, as you mentioned. So that's the North Bay area from Sonoma County, where the big wildfires were last year,
Okay.
out to the East Bay and Vallejo and Martinez, and then up through the Napa Valley, the wine country that people are familiar with all across the country,
Sure.
through Napa Valley, and up to rural Lake County, where I lived for several years as a teacher.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I'm an everyday dude, and I'm running for office.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
What did you teach in school?
I taught, I subbed for many years and taught all over the place, but I ended up landing teaching high school history, influenced strongly by Howard Zinn and the tradition of a people's history and sort of social movement history. But I was teaching U.S. and world history to high school students, and now I teach adults. I teach anatomy and physiology at the World School in San Francisco.
Very nice.
That's cool.
War itself is the enemy of the human race. My favorite quote from Howard Zinn. I love Howard Zinn. Also, it seems like there's a correlation with progressive candidates that we've interviewed and history teaching.
Yeah.
Huh?
We've had several, and then I was going to school for history as well. So
I mean, when you think about it, it's not that shocking.
No, not really.
People who understand history.
Well, true. Yeah, you see what happened in the past.
Then those who don't understand the history are doomed to repeat it, as Malcolm X and so many have reminded us. So hopefully we'll actually have a chance to learn from what's happened to the human race so far and have a chance to evolve consciously.
Exactly. I love that. That's awesome. So was there a particular moment that inspired you to run? Was there like one standout moment that you just said, this is my calling?
Sure. I've been doing grassroots activism for many years. I actually, I've been a part of the political revolution for ever since I was a teenager, but I started sort of getting burnt out. And then I found my calling 10 years ago to do local, nonpartisan, just grassroots, building community resilience, local food security, protecting the local watershed. I mean, stuff that kind of everyone can buy into, and wasn't doing electoral stuff. And I had a community radio show where at one point I interviewed a candidate who was challenging. We have a long-time corporate Democratic establishment sort of incumbent that's been in there for going on 20 years now. Mm-hmm. So 4 years ago in the 2014 midterm, I interviewed the opposition, the challenger, and that sort of planted the seed for me, thinking I may run for office someday. And so then as we got closer to the 2016 election, I went out to see if I wanted to do this. I went out to Washington, D.C., and I met my representative. and expressed the concern of my generation. I'm a millennial. I expressed my concern about wealth inequality and climate change and a healthcare system that's not taking care of people, and the student debt crisis. And what I got was kind of the runaround. Mm-hmm. And I didn't hear anything very meaningful. In fact, the only real quote that I left with that felt really important was when he said, "You'll never get money out of politics." Like a literal quote, "You'll never get money out of politics." Wow. And I'm like, challenge accepted.
Yeah, right.
And I went home and when it was time to like declare, and this was like right on that trip, like 2 days later, Bernie Sanders made his declaration that he's running for president.
Oh, very good.
And then I got home and it was time to declare or not declare as a candidate. And I was clicking around on the Federal Election Commission website with all the campaign finance disclosures from the politicians. And I saw, just for that election cycle alone, $500,000 from the world's worst corporations and lobbyists. Right. You name it, right? Big banks, military industrial complex, mm-hmm. big pharma. And that's who's funding our Democrat. And so I knew I had to do it. No one was challenging him. I had to run. So I ran in 2016 and doing it again this year.
Well, very nice. So tell us a little bit about your district, because you kind of alluded to your opponent. Who is your opponent, and what's the general consensus of your actual district?
Sure. My opponent's name is Mike Thompson. He's a 10-term Democrat. He's what's known as a blue dog Democrat, which sort of delineates him as a more centrist, neoliberal, war hawkish Democrat. The population of my district, this feels like Bernie country. This feels like, the Sonoma County is like, this is like the North Bay area. This is like, in many ways, incredibly a progressive area. I'm sitting right now in Sebastopol, where my other day job is at a sustainability nonprofit, and the ethos here is very eco-friendly, social justice oriented, standing with Standing Rock. Everybody, listens to Democracy Now! And that's the vibe here. And then there's also, a tremendous Latino community and a lot of migrant workers who are disenfranchised and underrepresented. There's a housing crisis throughout the Bay Area. I was displaced from my home by a wildfire in 2015, and in the housing crisis, it took me like 6 months to even find a place that I could afford. So the housing crisis is very real. Wealth inequality is very real. And then it gets out to Vallejo, which is kind of like in the Northeast Bay. And there's a lot of, it's like former base, military naval base town. And there's a lot of sort of economic instability there as well. And also, having dealt with so many of these recent wildfires, we're dealing with the consequences of climate change. We're dealing with a need to be protecting our watersheds and taking care of our ecosystem in a more resilient way, so that as things continue to change as we go into the future, we're ready, and we're ready to bounce back when the unexpected happens, like wildfires and droughts.
And that was actually going to be one of my next questions, because you said you live in the area, well, at least one of the areas, because it was a huge wildfire that was affected. Just out of curiosity, how has it been dealing with that? Because we're from Pennsylvania, so if we get a wildfire, it's more of a brush fire, and it's put out within hours. So just out of curiosity, I know it's not really political, but what's that like dealing with?
It's crazy. The thing is, it is political. Sure, on some level, like the fire doesn't care what party you belong to, and it's just coming. There were record wildfires in 2015 when I was living in Lake County, and I don't know if you remember that far back, but that stuff made national news because it was at the time that was called the Valley Fire. It was the second most destructive wildfire in California's history, and that's the one that displaced me from my home. And one thing that I noticed in the wake of that fire and doing community relief efforts was that people didn't care about each other's politics during that time. Like one of the ranchers that I met, whose house burned down, who lost everything. He had not everything though. He survived. His wife survived. They just lost their house, and he had 180 head of cattle, and they all survived by taking to the water. They all climbed in the pond when the fire came. And he said when he went to feed the cattle a couple of days after they put the fire out, he went to feed them, and usually the cows are in there, like the alpha ones are nudging aside the little runts, and they're kind of a little war just to get the food. But this time after the fire, he went to feed them, and they weren't they were like filing in Zen and peacefully sharing, and the big ones were making sure the little ones got enough. And it's like, that's the way the people were after the fire. It's like, okay, politics be damned. Like, we all need food, we all need water and medicine, we all need basic services. So I don't know. Yeah, it's not a political thing, and it is too. And then I moved to this Sonoma County where the huge fire happened in 2017, just recently. So yeah, it's on people's minds. I mean, you can tell during the summer how dry the land is, the drought. It definitely feels to me related to climate change. And I don't know if I'm answering your question. It's on people's minds, and it's more than just like, getting money to rebuild. We actually need to be rethinking the way we're managing our resources so that we're resilient to begin with.
No, you definitely answered my question. Yeah, it was just more of like watching it from a distance was scary enough.
Yeah,
I couldn't even imagine what it was like living in that kind of a situation. So, yeah,
and there are neighborhoods that are still just completely like it's just a bomb was dropped there. Like, there's some people have like cleared their lots to start rebuilding, but for the most part, they're like, you drive through neighborhoods and it's like ash and then chimneys sticking up, because the chimneys are the only part of the house that didn't burn down, like chimneys and like some like kind of melted, deformed looking appliances.
Oh, that's crazy. Wow. That's crazy. So you did mention in that and it's pretty obvious that the environment means a lot to you. What are some of the other issues that you believe you represent the best? What are you going to focus on if you do win the 5th congressional district?
One thing that is really important to me is Medicare for all. This is a big part of my lineage, was losing my father to cancer and then losing our family home to debt from the medical bills, because that just dealing with like the level of insurance that he had, he couldn't afford the care that he needed. He died deeply in debt. My stepmom had to move across the bay and leave her community, and so it seemed like a really stark illustration. And this was back in 2008, right after Michael Moore's film Sicko came out, and since then we've been seeing all these the evidence of how single payer, universal healthcare, Medicare for all type systems work around the world in virtually every developed country that has taken it on. The United States is a standout in having this for-profit medical system. So that seems important to me. Also, my sweetheart is a midwife. She's a nurse midwife at a big hospital. Okay. And whenever we talk about the healthcare thing, she's quick to link it to the student debt thing. Because we sometimes the working class sort of like lower middle class folk. Like I'm a 2-job working dad. Right. And, sometimes the working class folks, think that the doctors and healthcare professionals have it easy. But even like some of the most highly paid doctors are spending half of their paycheck paying back their student loans. So like doctors who are getting paid 6-figure salaries are paying crazy amounts on student loans. And I feel like, we've heard so many stats about how many millions of Americans are crippled by student debt. I am deep in student debt, and I know I'm not alone. So taking care of this situation, both creating tuition-free public colleges and universities and universal pre-K while we're at it, but then also finding a way to handle the existing student debt crisis so that we free up our young and actually people of all ages to be innovative, to be creative, and to do the work that's really going to transform our world, and not feel like we need to sell ourselves into wage slavery just to make ends meet.
Right. Yeah, it's extremely important. And you're right. They're definitely linked. Well, one way or another, all of these topics that we'll talk about, they're all going to be linked one way or another. But that's an important one, because if you do see a doctor who's probably, if they landed the job they want, they're probably going to make over $100,000, you would say, they still might be struggling because they have to go to school for so long, and those schools are not cheap.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's extremely important.
And it depends on how old they are too, because our generation's one that really got hit.
Yeah, it's true.
With the student loan crisis. I mean, if they're near retirement, they probably got to go to school a lot cheaper than we did.
Most likely, yeah.
So. Right, totally. Are you all both millennials as well?
Yep.
Yeah. We're both 27.
Yeah.
Or are you 27 yet?
Almost
27. Yeah. So, we're from the same generation, so we have the same, for at least in a lot of ways, we have the same problems.
Yeah.
Where do you stand on minimum wage?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, California has taken some steps as a state to lead this movement to raise the minimum wage, and absolutely, I believe in lifting the federal minimum wage, above and beyond $15 an hour. And then there are additional solutions that are out there, things like a national job guarantee. I mean, if you look around in nature, there's no unemployment in nature. Every creature, every plant has a job to do, and right now we got plenty of things that we need to be doing and building. If we identify it, allocate the funds toward it, to building bridges and schools and stoking our infrastructure instead of letting it crumble, like the bridge in the Twin Cities, of seeing our bridges fall down because we're not maintaining them. We could be doing a tremendous amount, building a green energy infrastructure. I mean, there's a lot of work to be doing, and so I think if we allocate our funds, and that's so much about what this job is about, right? Like setting the budget and choosing to decide how we're going to share. And if you don't make rules about how we're going to share, and this is the same as like on the playground, my daughter goes to a preschool. If there aren't rules like about how to share, then you got Timmy. Sorry, that's probably maybe not the best name to use, but little Timmy over here has 90% of the toys on the playground, and all the other kids just have like a ball. It's like, no, okay, we're gonna share. We're gonna share so that everybody can play, and that's what we need to be doing. The Congress that's setting the laws for the country needs to be encouraging our sharing in a way that's going to be just.
So the tax bill was a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the term tax scam, but yeah, I have a strong sense that it was designed to benefit the wealthiest few, just a very super super tiny few, while the rest of us continue to fight over the scraps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if less scraps now, more than ever, most likely.
Gosh, and then all these other like these things that divide and conquer us, and then people end up, fighting over, like citizenship status and issues of race and color and sex and gender and like all these things that are being used to divide. When really, like, we're the 99%, and we all really need and want the same thing. And if we just work together, our victory is assured.
Yeah.
It's very true. Yeah. Uniting the 99% is going to be a challenge, but if most of the 99% at least gets together, there's really not much that
they can't stop us.
Yeah, they really can't stop us. So now
and he brought up the jobs guarantee, which lets us plug our episode from last week,
which we talked about. We literally talked about that. Yeah. So we ask every single person who comes onto the show, every single candidate, the same question, because it's an extremely important question for you and for us to know, where your morals are. How do you finance your campaign?
Yeah, I finance my campaign on completely grassroots donations. I take no corporate money, no lobbyist money, no PAC or super PAC money. So I've got a page on CrowdPack where people donate, $5, $10, $27 at a time. And that's how I finance my campaign. Now there are 4 candidates in this race, and I'm the only challenger to have my statement of qualification, other than the incumbent. There's a little 250-word blurb. I don't know if it's the same in Pennsylvania, but a couple of months before the election, everyone gets a little pamphlet. It describes the propositions on the ballot, and the candidates can have a few words, 250 words on the voter guide. That costs a crazy amount of money. And whenever I see the bill for that, it's like, it reminds me of how working class people are priced out of politics, because it's like more than 10 grand just to get your little 250 words in front of voters in English and Spanish. And anyway, so I've raised almost enough for that, and I've self-funded and /loaned myself money /borrowed a little bit to meet that last amount. And if anyone happens to hear this and feel inspired by what I'm speaking and inspired by my message, which I know I'm just a part of a greater movement, but I think we need to have voices like mine and like ours in our national political scene. I definitely encourage those $27 donations because they go a long way. And I'm running up against a guy who's taking $500, $1,000, $2,500, $5,000 donations from your Bank of America, Walmart, Verizon, Comcast, Merck, Lockheed Martin companies of the world. So, yeah.
So when's your primary?
The California statewide primary is on June 5th.
Okay, so you got a little bit more time here, which is good.
Oh, is yours sooner out there?
I think, ours is in May.
Yeah.
So it's it's coming up in a little less than a month or so. And
I think in New York it's June.
Yeah.
June. I think it might be the same day actually.
Yeah,
now,
well, it feels like it's right around the corner, June 5th.
It really does, It's coming up quick. Now, to answer your question from before about Pennsylvania, no. They don't tell us anything. I mean, if it involves being, somewhat productive, the state's not going to do it. So
yeah, there's a big push here to keep incumbents. That's what they like.
Yeah.
That's going on all over the place, really.
Yeah, it is. It is. PA is definitely not innocent of that.
No.
the hilarious and also terrifying 9, 10, 11% approval rating for Congress, and then the parallel 90 to 95% re-election rate.
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense.
No, yeah.
If I had a 9% approval rating at my job, I would get fired.
Yeah. Well, if you had way more than that, but still under 60, 70, you're probably getting fired.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're getting a 60%, in class in school, that you're failing. You're failing.
You're failing.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't be reelected, and I think finally, maybe for the first time, at least in our generation, that actually might not happen. They probably are not going to get reelected.
A lot of them,
at least, or
especially in the House.
Yeah, well, those guys are resigning, so it's a little different story.
And that's why electoral reform and getting money out of politics is what it really comes down to. Because there's all these issues, and we could talk forever about minimum wage and Medicare for all and student loan restructuring and all these things. But really, getting money out of politics and having publicly financed elections is where it's going to be at. And then, actually restoring our democracy so that more than 50% of the people actually show up to vote.
Exactly.
That's where it's at.
Yep. Well, I mean, there's not much more to say from us. We love the platform. Your platform falls in line with literally everything, and you like Howard Zinn, so that's even more bonus points on my book.
Yeah, you had Tom at Howard Zinn.
You had me right there.
I want to get a Howard Zinn tattoo. I don't have one yet, but
get it
on my leg.
I don't have any tattoos, but that's one that I could definitely see myself getting. Why don't you use this whatever time you need to plug everything that you can possibly plug?
Oh, you mean how to get in touch with me and all that?
Yeah, anything that'll help you out.
All right. Well, I would invite folks to find this campaign and support it. And honestly, there are so many races happening all around the country, and they all matter because it's not just for the people in the district. The representative, represents the constituents. I would represent the people of California's 5th district. And also, the Congress is setting laws for the entire nation, which is, affecting the entire world. So what's happening in the 5th District of California or the 5th District of Pennsylvania or any district anywhere, that matters to everybody. We're setting the law for the entire country. And, unfortunately, the way America's dealing right now is that's affecting the entire world for better or worse. Mm-hmm. So please, I do invite people to track this race. You can find me on the web, Nils, Nils, for Congress.com. Learn how to get involved there. You can read all sorts of press. I got videos and do Facebook Lives and all of that. I am on Facebook. Again, Nils, Nils, for Congress. Nils Palsson, you can see it probably in the show notes how to spell my last name, Palsson. Nils Palsson on Instagram, Ni Palsson on Twitter. I would love to build this movement with you, and definitely have not been focusing on fundraising because there's actual work to do.
Right.
And at the same time, it does need to happen. And so I do encourage, because I'm creating a realistic budget for a campaign that's actually going to win. I encourage folks to support in that way if it feels authentic. And just one other note, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
I ran in 2016. I was elected to be a delegate for Bernie Sanders. I ran in 2016 as a Bernie-crat, and I came in third in the primary with 12.5% of the vote.
Whoa.
And yeah, I know I did actually better than comparable Bernie-crats around the country. There were other Bernie-crats who were, pulling like 8%. Mm-hmm. So I did pretty good, 12.5% on barely any budget at all. And California's got the top 2 primary system where it's not, it doesn't matter what party you're in. It's not like a Democratic primary and a Republican primary. It's an all comers, everybody on the ballot, and then top 2 make it into the November election. Okay. So I got beat out in the primary last time around by a Republican who had no campaign whatsoever. He had literally no website, no appearances, nothing. He just his name and the R, and he pulled 19%, and I got 12.5%. Jeez. This time around, there is no Republican. There is a Democratic incumbent. There is a Green candidate who's doing very little. There is another no party preference candidate who has no information to speak of whatsoever. And there's me. And so I feel like I'm actually really well positioned to make it through this primary and be taking on our Democratic incumbent from the left in the November election. This feels winnable. This feels like an actual district where we can get a real, sane, progressive, for the people elected. And I want nothing short of the political revolution that people like Bernie Sanders and other folks, Nina Turner and Cornel West and Howard Zinn and so many others have spoken of. So that's why I'm here. I appreciate you guys sharing this space with me. And by all means, I encourage any means of support, even just the sending of good vibes from anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you have our support for sure. Mm-hmm. And at the very least, if you can't donate, because I understand if you don't have the money to donate to the campaign, even though that would help the most, at the very least, follow on Twitter and Facebook, retweet, share everything that's possible. The more you can spread any progressive candidates' names, the better off you'll be. So at the very least, do something like that. And I know from the candidates that we have interviewed, a lot of our followers do tend to follow their pages almost instantly. So I encourage you to also do that as well. Just to
those little likes and shares totally add up because especially I don't know how the Facebook algorithms are working. It's it's interesting week to be having this conversation with good old Zuck testifying in front of Congress. But I don't know how the algorithms work because sometimes I share things and there's 1,200 people liking my page and following me, and yet it doesn't seem to be getting in front of people. I don't know if they're trying to get me to pay them to boost posts or what, but if people are actually authentically sharing, then you can't stop it. It gets out. Right. So
exactly. So
grassroots of buy in for the people. Let's do this.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Thank you for coming on the show. And anytime you want to come back on, just shoot us a message and we'll be happy to have you back on.
I just want to acknowledge you guys. The independent media is really so crucial, and it's where it's at. So I'm honored to be here with you, and thank you for you're inspirational. Actually, saying, "Hey, we're going to start a podcast." Thank you, do it. Yeah. And so thanks to all the independent media makers out there. Big shout out to Amy Goodman and all our other friends like you guys who are leading the way. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Yeah. We'll take a quick break from here, and we'll conclude the show.